Howdy, my name is Mitchell Whittington from the YouTube Visit Jefferson channel. You know, the old river port of Jefferson, Texas is known for many things, like the steamboats that docked here during the 1800s, some of them coming from as far away as New Orleans. In our world today, Jefferson is also famous for its historic hotels and bed and breakfast inns, and for the horse-drawn carriage rides on the old brick streets downtown. One thing that you may not know about Jefferson, Texas, however, is its longtime association with the big, hairy, biped mammal known as Bigfoot. In the state of Texas, most of the encounters with this creature have taken place in East Texas. If the beast is real, this is not all that surprising. East Texas has almost 12 million acres of forest land. It would be the perfect place for this fella to hide away. Legend has it that even Davy Crockett encountered a Bigfoot-like creature near Nacogdoches in East Texas when making his fateful journey to the Alamo. It was covered in hair, had broken teeth, and was over 8 feet tall. Jefferson, Texas, received an official proclamation as being the Bigfoot Capital of Texas. Now, anybody can proclaim anything to be anything. So, is this title deserved? Well, the sightings in Jefferson and Marion County go back a long way, and many have been documented in newspaper accounts through the years. You see some of them here. Back in November 1927, a 23-year-old Texas and Pacific Railroad worker saw a large hairy beast beside the railroad tracks. He stuck his head back inside the locomotive cab and told the other men about it, but they didn't want any part of it, so they didn't even take a peek outside. About 30 years later, in September 1956, a 13-year-old boy was chased by an ape-like creature while walking home from a friend's house one afternoon. 2 men picked the boy up in a car and drove him home. The boy described the creature as being about 7 feet tall, with thick, long black hair all over its body, except for the face, stomach, and palms of its hands. In August of 1965, a 12-year-old boy was out fishing and heard something rustling in the tall weeds nearby. He figured it was some kind of animal, so he threw several rocks into the growth of weeds, and a large creature covered in dark hair came out. The boy started running and was hysterical by the time he got home. A month later, in September 1965, that railroad worker from 1927 that I told you about had another experience. He was now a 61-year-old Texas and Pacific Railroad conductor, and as he was walking along the tracks, inspecting them, he saw giant footprints beside them, just outside of Jefferson. Now, as it turns out, a day before, a Jefferson woman had seen similar footprints near the old Foundry Cemetery. She had gone out there with a friend. She saw the tracks and then heard a growl coming from the woods nearby. In October 1975, on the Louisiana side of Caddo Lake, sheriff's deputies answered a call where a woman reported a, quote, big, tall, furry monster, end quote. The creature eluded the deputies. Sightings of this legendary beast continue to this very day. In the last decade, there have been over 200 sightings in East Texas alone. Not all have been reported to the authorities, and they have been made by a diverse group of people: hunters, fishermen, doctors, lawyers, police officers, teachers, preachers, and people from all different walks of life. These folks aren't looking for attention. A good number of them don't even want their name used for fear of ridicule, in fact. The city of Jefferson seems to have embraced the big, hairy beast. At the Front Porch store on Polk Street, you can purchase just about anything from a Bigfoot t-shirt to a Christmas ornament of the monster. Over at the eastern entrance to the Port Jefferson History and Nature Center walk, you'll find a statue of Bigfoot himself, perfect for a selfie to commemorate your visit. In fact, maybe I should take one right now. Hey, not too bad. If you continue the walk, however, you'll soon find yourself in Bigfoot Alley. That's the trail between the entrance alley and the bridge, and if you look carefully in the woods, you may see a Bigfoot or two. I've heard there's up to 4 out there. Also, a number of Bigfoot-themed movies have been filmed in town and the surrounding areas. I can think of half a dozen of them just off the top of my head. My favorite is Southern Fried Bigfoot, because I'm actually in that movie. I also remember when Something in the Woods was being filmed here in Jefferson, the whole town pitched in to try to help the folks make that movie happen. My wife and I fed the cast and crew for dinner one day after they'd had a long day of filming. A huge Bigfoot conference is held in the city every fall at the Visitor Center in Jefferson, and it has attracted some of the most famous names in cryptozoology, along with film crews from as far away as Japan. Just Google Texas Bigfoot Conference to get more information. I believe that you'd find it interesting. What do I personally think of Bigfoot? Well, I've never seen the creature, but I do have a couple of t-shirts with him on front. One day I'd gone into a local store wearing one of those, and the fellow ringing up my purchases got quiet for a moment, looked at my shirt, and he said, "That's real, you know." I smiled and explained I didn't really know what to think about Bigfoot, but he just shook his head. "I'm not kidding," he said. "I used to work at a steel mill not far from here, and so I'd have to leave Jefferson at about 5 a.m. when it was still dark. One day, on a country road that I always took, a hair-covered animal ran across the road in front of me. It moved on 2 feet like a man, swinging its arms like a runner would. I grew up around here, so I know every type of animal in the county. This was like nothing I'd ever seen before." The fellow nodded at my t-shirt and said, "It was one of those." Another time, my wife and I were out on a Sunday afternoon drive with another couple. They were friends of ours and were 2 of the most highly respected people in Jefferson. Their word was above reproach. They were sitting in the front seat and my wife and I were in the back. As we traveled down country roads, watching the countryside go by, I made the joking comment that we should keep an eye out for Bigfoot. We'd all been laughing and talking, but they both fell suddenly silent and glanced over at each other. It was an awkward moment, but finally the wife turned around and looked at me and softly said, "We saw one of those out here, not far from where we are now." I asked for more information, and she said, "My husband and I were driving around just like we are now and looked across a pasture to see a large figure, like a human, but covered in dark hair. It walked like a man, not like a bear or any other animal, and suddenly stepped into the forest and simply disappeared. We've never told anyone about it, so please don't ever put our names with this story. It really happened, though." As serious as she was and as silent as her husband was while she spoke, I have no doubt that it was true. When people ask me whether I believe in Bigfoot or not, I just shrug my shoulders and truthfully say, I don't know. But at this point in my life, I'm not willing to simply categorically dismiss anything. After all, scientists discover between 15,000 and 18,000 new species every single year. About half of those are insects, but still that means a lot of larger critters are out there still waiting to be found. And who knows? Maybe this year one of them will be Bigfoot. All I know is if I were going to look for the big fella, I think that Jefferson, Texas, and Marion County would be the perfect place to start.